It all started in a way no one could have predicted. Ringo Starr, the legendary drummer of the Beatles, and Peter Frampton, the golden-haired guitar genius from Humble Pie and Frampton Comes Alive, weren't exactly the most obvious pair. One was from the most famous band in history, and the other was riding the solo wave of 70s rock stardom. But somehow, they clicked. In the late 70s, after the Beatles had broken up and Frampton's fame was soaring, the two crossed paths more often in the Los Angeles music scene. Both were British rock royalty living in California, navigating solo careers and trying to reinvent themselves after massive success. Ringo was working on his solo albums, and Peter was dealing with the pressure of following up one of the most successful live albums of all time. They shared laughs, dinners, even some sessions together. Ringo liked Peter's style, calm, respectful, and wildly talented, and Peter admired Ringo's ability to stay grounded even after living through Beatlemania. Then came a big project, a movie. In 1978, the film Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was in the works. It was going to be huge, a musical fantasy based on the Beatles' legendary album, starring Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees. Ringo wasn't part of the movie, but it was still his band's legacy on the line, and things were about to get messy. What started as a colorful musical tribute turned into one of the most criticized rock movies ever made. And for Ringo Starr, it wasn't just a bad movie. It felt like Betrayal, the movie that broke the bond, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The film was supposed to celebrate the magic of the Beatles, but when Ringo watched the final product, he didn't see magic, he saw disaster. The plot was confusing, the music felt forced, and the once revolutionary songs of the Beatles were transformed into flashy musical numbers. Peter Frampton played the lead, Billy Shears, a character based on Ringo's original role in the Beatles' album concept. It hit Ringo like a punch. To him, it felt like someone had taken something sacred and turned it into a cartoon. He didn't blame Peter entirely, but seeing his friend in the middle of it, singing "With a Little Help from My Friends," Ringo's iconic song, was too much. Ringo wasn't shy about his feelings. In private circles, he let it be known. He hated the film. He thought it made a joke out of what the Beatles stood for. And Peter Frampton, the face of the project, suddenly became the face of everything Ringo resented about the movie. Frampton, on the other hand, had no idea the storm was coming. He had done the movie thinking it would be a fun tribute. He loved the Beatles. He thought it was honoring them. But Ringo didn't see it that way. From that moment on, their friendship was never the same. Calls went unanswered. Meetings stopped happening. Ringo began to distance himself, quietly but firmly. And Peter began to wonder, what did I do wrong? Silence between legends. After the movie flopped, critics tore it apart, fans were confused, and the industry acted like it had never happened. Frampton's career took a hit. The Bee Gees never spoke of it again. And Ringo? He went quiet, at least in public. But behind the scenes, the rift between Ringo and Peter had grown. Mutual friends noticed the change. They were no longer seen at the same parties, no longer collaborating on anything. Peter, who once thought of Ringo as a mentor, felt the chill. For years, he didn't understand the full reason. Ringo never publicly slammed Peter. He never gave interviews dragging his name through the mud. That wasn't his style. But privately, the disappointment ran deep. It wasn't just about the movie. It was about what that movie represented. To Ringo, the Beatles were more than songs. They were moments in time. Deeply personal, sometimes painful, always powerful, and watching others repackage that legacy, especially people close to him, felt like a violation. Peter continued his career, humbled but determined. He rebuilt, played smaller venues, and reconnected with fans. He thought about reaching out again, but something always held him back. Would Ringo even pick up? Decades passed, and then something happened that no one expected. It was nearly 4 decades later when fate stepped in. The year was 2016. A charity event in Los Angeles brought together a long list of rock legends. The room was full of familiar faces, guitar heroes, drummers, songwriters, and among them, both Peter Frampton and Ringo Starr had quietly accepted invitations, not knowing the other would be there. Peter walked in first. He'd aged with grace. Still soft-spoken, still carrying his guitar like it was part of his soul. He wasn't expecting anything dramatic. He was just there to support a good cause and maybe jam with a few friends. But as he turned toward the stage setup, he froze. There he was, Ringo Starr, dressed sharp as ever, signature shades on, talking and laughing with a small group, drumsticks casually twirling in his hand. Peter hadn't seen him in decades. Not really. His heart pounded. Should he walk over? Should he pretend not to notice? The last time they truly spoke was before Sgt. Pepper, before everything changed. But something told him this was the moment. So Peter took a breath and approached. "Ringo," he said quietly. Ringo turned. For a split second, his expression was unreadable. Then, a smile. A real one. "Peter," Ringo said, arms opening for a hug. No anger, no coldness, just warmth. The ice had finally melted. The two talked for over an hour that night. Away from cameras, away from the crowd. Peter finally got the chance to say what he had wanted to for years. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "I thought it was a tribute. I didn't know it would come across the way it did." Ringo nodded slowly. "I know," he said. "Took me a while to get that, but I know now. It wasn't just about a bad movie anymore. Time had softened the edges of old wounds. The world had changed. The Beatles were legends. Peter Frampton was respected again. The anger had faded. All that remained was memory, and maybe a little regret." Before the night was over, the two even jammed on stage together. Not with a little help from my friends, but a bluesy instrumental that had the crowd on its feet. People in the audience had no idea they were watching a silent reunion, but those who did, they knew something powerful had just happened. And yet, that wasn't the final chapter. Something even more surprising came after that. Ringo's private confession. A few months after that quiet reunion, something unexpected came to light. It wasn't a press release. It wasn't a headline. It was something found in Ringo Starr's handwritten notes, pages he had kept over the years, where he'd write down thoughts, lyrics, or just whatever was weighing on his mind. One of Ringo's longtime friends, a close assistant, revealed that during a deep studio cleaning, they had found a stack of old journals. Most of it was personal rambling, song ideas, doodles, funny memories from the road. But buried in the middle was a simple entry dated around 1980, just 2 years after the Sgt. Pepper movie came out. It read, "Still not over it. Frampton. I don't know what he was thinking. Taking with a little help like that? It's like he borrowed my face without asking. I feel stupid for being mad, but it hurts. It's not just a song. That was mine." Even in private, Ringo didn't lash out. But the words were raw, honest. It showed how deep the wound really was. To the world, Ringo had always been the light-hearted Beatle. Funny, kind, always smiling. But behind the scenes, he had carried this quiet hurt for decades. And here's the twist. In a much more recent entry, just after the 2016 charity event, Ringo had scribbled a new note. Same journal, same handwriting. But the tone, very different. "Saw Peter again. He looked tired but good. Still got that smile. I think we're all right now. Time fixes what pride won't. He meant no harm. And truth be told, I missed the lad." That one page said more than any interview ever could. Ringo never brought it up in public. He didn't need to. For him, writing it down was enough. Closure wasn't always about a big apology or a dramatic scene. Sometimes it's just a quiet realization. Peter Frampton never knew about that journal. But later, when he was told about it in a backstage conversation, and with a mutual friend, his eyes reportedly welled up. "That means the world," he whispered. "I always looked up to him. Still do." And with that, the weight of nearly 40 years of silence finally lifted. Two icons from different corners of rock history, once divided by misunderstanding, found their way back to respect and maybe even friendship. But there's still one final twist to this story, one that fans never saw coming.